Hello there, and welcome to another video. This time we are doing, make sure I'm actually on YouTube. This time we're just doing a little live stream Q&A. Looks like we have a little bit of a delay there. Looks like today we're just doing a live stream Q&A, so this is just open, ask questions. We'll answer them. Please come and ask questions, because otherwise I'm just gonna be might have to go get my cat and just sing to my cat. We'll figure out something to do. So if you're here in the comments, go ahead and say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. If you have questions, ask questions. Otherwise, I'm not sure what we're gonna do. Turns out, like I've been really bad about like announcing things on social media. Oh, one of my lights isn't on either. I've been really bad about it, so I like didn't announce that this was happening. So I'm not sure if anybody's gonna actually be here. So again, if you have questions, ask questions. Otherwise, I'm just gonna like rant about people who sell their textbooks on Facebook as soon as they graduate or other such nonsense. So give me just a second. This is bothering me. There we go. That's the kind of professionalism you expect from a live stream. Just you sign on and there's an empty screen because I forgot to turn a light on. So a few announcements before we get started, before we start answering some questions if anybody has them. A few announcements. Number one, I started making some more t-shirts for the merchandise section. I mean, I didn't make the t-shirts. I hired a graphic designer on Fiverr to make t-shirts. So if you go online at the Teespring store, there's some new stuff up there. So we got a little unicorn of acupuncture is magical. We got the same thing in black. I think it's a cute little unicorn. The man who did it for me was very nice. We have in acupuncture is magical, but also kind of stabby, which apparently a lot of people have been giving me shit about. They're like, oh, you shouldn't say that about acupuncture. It creates negative feeling. It's funny. And then another little unicorn mug. So so those are on the website right now. If you want to pick up those, I put a link in the description below. If you're on the Patreon, Patreon members, there's a little discount code if you go onto the Patreon, and so you can get that. Speaking of Patreon, so basically on Patreon, I had two tiers. In the upper tier, that was supposed to be like, oh, it gives you access to this private community page on Circle, and it's kind of like a Facebook group, but it's not on Facebook. So there's no ads, nobody's stealing your data. It's like I pay money to have this thing running, so that means there's no ads or anything. It turns out not a lot of people are using that. Like, to be fair, I wasn't really posting very much there either, but not a lot of people are using that. So I think I'm just going to shut that down. So in terms of that whole Patreon system, sorry, but I think I'm just going to discontinue that just because it's not getting a whole lot of use. And so what that means is we have these two tiers on the Patreon, and there's really not a whole lot of difference between the two. There's a $5 tier and a $10 tier. And so that means the difference between $5 and $10 is you're contributing more money, and I appreciate that. So I've also been thinking about, on the Patreon feed, I've been trying to do some things where I just answer questions like this as a Q&A. So if you're on the Patreon and you want to just ask some questions, I'll try to make some short little videos about that, just in sort of this live stream type of format. But I feel like I've tried doing that, and it's just like, I like make a video and it gets like 15 views or something like that. So I don't know. So I don't know what to do about that. So if you have any suggestions about that, let me know. Otherwise, if you just want to donate money to keep the website going, I appreciate you, and I appreciate that. Anna's here from Calgary. Hi, Anna. Thanks for being here. Hope everything's going well in Canada. I just talked to Zach Louis, who's in Toronto, which I don't know if that's anywhere near Calgary. But apparently Canada still exists, so that's good. So we're going to have a podcast coming out soon with Zach again about how to protect yourself from your patients and from their negative energy. So I always like talking to Zach. If you have questions, let me know. I have one from the Instagram where somebody asks, this is Careless, I think, asks, for example, what if a patient has clear, white, abundant urination but with upper jiao heat and other heat or damp heat symptoms? Can you tell us more about it? Not anchoring yang, yin and yang deficiency manifesting simultaneously, why so much water is escaping when it's necessary to be used in the upper jiao, maybe some more patterns according to this situation. Not everybody talks about it and there's short notes, maybe example. So yeah, this is kind of an interesting thing. So basically we're dealing with a situation where there are both heat and cold symptoms, where we see profuse, abundant, clear urination, which is something we usually associate with cold or yang deficiency. But then we also have these signs of heat, maybe heat in the upper jiao. So yeah, this is something that happens. So maybe we can think about going back to the very beginning when we talked about 8 principal diagnosis. 8 principal diagnosis is where we just asked a bunch of questions of, is it hot or is it cold? Is it interior or is it exterior? Is it excess or is it deficient? Is it yin or is it yang? And this is just a very basic way to start guiding our pattern diagnosis. When maybe we have some disease with 12 different patterns, this can help us kind of narrow it down by asking these simple questions and giving us a way to go. Well, it turns out when we do this 8 principal diagnosis, it's possible that you have 2 opposites going on at the same time. That a person, when you ask, is it hot or is it cold? It's possible the person is both hot and cold. It's possible that your condition is both exterior and interior. It's possible that you have some elements of excess and some elements of deficiency going on at the same time. And that's something that we call a complex pattern. That's a complex diagnosis or a complex pattern where we have these 2 opposites going on at once. So that is definitely a possibility. So yeah, one thing we mentioned here was we could have a both yin and yang deficiency, or Nigel Weissman would say a dual vacuity of yin and yang. And so it's basically in our body we got yin and yang, and it's possible that we can have yin deficiency or we can have yang deficiency, or we can have both yin and yang deficiency at the same time. I would say usually when that happens, the one is relatively more than the other. It's usually not completely equal. There's usually one that's more than the other. And usually the way this happens is you start out with one and it leads to the other. So a person starts out with yin deficiency and they have a lot of heat and that burns up their resources and they end up with yang deficiency. Or a person has a lot of yang deficiency and they have a lot of cold, they lack transformation, and because they can't digest their food or transform everything, they end up with yin deficiency. And so usually one comes first and that leads to the other. Usually when we have both, one is more severe than the other. So that can kind of guide you as to how to treat it. Maybe you want to treat both equally. Maybe you want to treat one more than the other, depending on the signs. But I'm kind of thinking the way that you treat that is you just treat both. We can treat both at the same time. We have points and formulas for that. So like one thing that comes to mind is Jingwei Shanqiwan kidney qi pill from the Jingwei Yalwei. This is a Zhong formula. And it's kind of funny because our main kidney yang tonifying formula is Shenqiwan. Our main yin tonifying formula is Liuwei Dihuangwan. It turns out Shenqiwan came first, and then somebody just kind of took out the Futzen Rogue Wei and made it into Liuwei Dihuangwan. So we started with a yang tonic, we took out some warm herbs and turned it into a yin tonic. I guess kind of the point here is what this means is Shenqiwan has yang tonics or warming agents like Futsa and Zhouwei or Guizhi, but it also has a lot of yin tonifying ingredients as well. So we could say that Shenqiwan, we could call it a kidney yang tonic, or we could say it tonifies both yin and yang because it does have both warming and cooling, tonifying and draining, promote urination, and induce astringency. So that's one possibility, is that we have this dual vacuity of both yin and yang. Another possibility is that we just have both heat and cold at the same time. Sometimes we talk about things like heat above and cold below, or heat on the exterior with cold on the interior. Again, this complex pattern where we have both pathogens, but they're at different places or doing different things. And I think this is why some of learning herbs can be really interesting. Learning formulas, even if you're not planning on prescribing formulas, some of our formulas kind of lay out these patterns for us. We have formulas like Da Ching Long Tong, major blue-green dragon decoction, where you have an external attack of wind cold with interior heat. So we have some herbs that are taking care of cold on the exterior and other herbs that are taking care of heat on the interior. It's this complex pattern of both heat and cold. We can have like heat above and cold below, formulas like Jiao Taiwan, where we use Huang Lian to clear heat out of the heart, but we use Rogue Wei to warm the kidney. So we have heat in the upper jiao, but cold in the lower jiao. And we basically treat them both. We drain the heat, and then we use Rogue Wei to warm the kidneys and anchor that floating yang. So that's another possibility, is maybe we just have heat and cold existing at the same time, but they're in different parts of the body, and then we would just treat them at different parts of the body, or we would use a harmonizing strategy to harmonize yin and yang. So that's another possibility. We could have just a dual vacuity of yin and yang, and they both exist at the same time, but maybe one is more predominant than the other. We could have a combination of heat and cold at the same time, as in a complex pattern. Heat above, cold below, heat on the exterior, cold on the interior, or something like that. We could also, if we're just looking at the symptoms, we can also have a situation of, we can talk about true heat with false cold, or true cold with false heat. And basically when we talk about like false cold or false heat, basically what we mean are signs and symptoms that maybe look like cold but aren't actually caused by cold, they're caused by heat. Or signs and symptoms that look like heat but they're not actually heat, they're actually caused by cold. So one example I always like to use with this is I think this is the second time I went in to get acupuncture at my school when I was a student. Intern was asking me a whole bunch of questions, and basically they thought I had a lot of heat. So they're like, what's your body temperature like? I'm like, oh, I'm always warm, I'm always sweaty. Sometimes I'm just sitting here and I start sweating. If we're in the air conditioner, I like to turn the air conditioner down to like 68 or 65. I'm like always warm. And then looking at my skin, I had a lot of breakouts on my skin, I had a lot of acne on my back and shoulders. And the intern was like, oh, this guy has a lot of heat. We need to drain heat. We need to clear out some of this heat, maybe give some cold herbs to cool him down. But then the supervisor came in and he looked at my tongue, and my tongue is very pale and swollen, still has a lot of teeth marks. Not really red, not really dry, not really cracked. We feel my pulse. I was running a lot of the time. My pulse was like 45 beats per minute. So when we looked at the tongue and pulse, there were no signs of heat. The tongue showed, if anything, signs of cold or signs of yang deficiency. My pulse was really slow. There definitely wasn't heat. So what was going on? Well, the supervisor said, maybe he's telling you that he has a lot of heat. So you may be thinking that there's an overabundance of yang. But really what's happening is there's yang deficiency. And because the yang is deficient, it's not rooted, so it's floating to the exterior. So we have these exterior signs of heat, like feels hot, sweats a lot, has a lot of skin problems. But when we look at the tongue and pulse, that's a sign of true cold. So when I say I'm hot, I'm sweaty, and I have a lot of acne, those are signs of false heat. When we look at my pulse and my tongue, we have true cold. So there are a couple situations where we can have true cold and false heat, or false heat and true cold. So that's one. If you have yang deficiency, maybe that yang floats either upward or outward and gives you the appearance of heat signs when really you're cold on the interior. Another example is like a Sunisan type pattern with frigid extremities. Maybe you have, the patient comes in and says, I have cold hands and feet, but they're still warm on their trunk and on their core. So if you just ask them, oh, I have cold hands and feet, you might be thinking, this person has yang deficiency. But when you take the pulse is rapid and wiry. When you look at the tongue is red. That gives you the true condition. It's true heat with false cold. Turns out that cold is just being caused by stagnation. There's liver qi stagnation. The liver can't spread the qi into the extremities, so you end up with cold hands and feet, but really you have a lot of heat in the center due to that stagnation. So that's another possibility of false heat and true cold. So if we're looking at this, what were we dealing with? We had some symptoms of heat in the upper jowl, but then still abundant urination. So there are also situations where maybe we wouldn't necessarily say, formally call it false heat but true cold, but sometimes weird things happen for weird reason. Like just symptoms are kind of confusing, and if you don't fully understand the pattern or the pathomechanism, things can look really weird. So like one example I talked about recently was this formula that was treating blood deficiency. So you had all these signs of blood deficiency, dry, lusterless skin, brittle nails, all this other stuff. And usually what happens when a person has blood deficiency is they're cold. That's a very common sign of blood deficiency, is a patient says, I feel cold, I'm always wearing a sweater. I ask, is it cold in here? Is it just me? And people are like, it's just you. But with this one particular formula, we had all these signs and symptoms of blood deficiency, but one of them was low-grade fever. And it was really weird because we were looking at like a pale tongue, a slow pulse, all these other signs of cold. You would think the person would be cold, but we had a low-grade fever. Why was that? Well, it turns out one possibility when you have blood deficiency, if you have blood deficiency, it's like things aren't circulating very well because you don't have enough blood. So the yang qi isn't circulating. You don't have enough blood to circulate, so the yang qi isn't circulating. So what happens is things stagnate, and that stagnation can turn into heat, and that's why we have a low-grade fever. So if you're just kind of looking at it on the surface, you might think like, oh, this person has all these cold signs, but they also have low-grade fever. Is this some weird combination of yin and yang? Actually, no. It's really just more that the low-grade fever is kind of a weird side effect of blood deficiency. Sometimes we see other things like constipation due to kidney yang deficiency. I like to talk about this one with jichuanjian, or with the single herb rotsongrong, Sistanches herba. Constipation due to kidney yang deficiency is very weird, very unusual. Usually when we have kidney yang deficiency, we expect to see diarrhea, watery diarrhea, early morning diarrhea, diarrhea with undigested food. So when constipation, we usually think of heat and dryness. How could a person with kidney yang deficiency not transforming the fluids end up with constipation? And really the answer here is, yes, usually we would see diarrhea, but in some specific cases, if the kidney is not properly transforming the fluids, kidney yang is deficient, so it's not transforming the fluids. So those fluids don't get into the large intestine to moisten the stool. And so all the fluids are going over to the UB, so you get profuse urination, but you also have constipation. And that's why I use formulas like jichuanjian. So another one that was interesting, just because this question was specifically referencing profuse urination, is another thing we talked about recently was matzarenwan, another formula for constipation. Matzarenwan is hemp seed pill. And so normally if you're in the clinic, when people think matzarenwan, they're like, oh, matzarenwan is for constipation. A person has constipation, dry stool, give them matzarenwan, hemp seed pill. It's good for constipation. Well, it turns out that this is actually a Zhongzhongjing formula. I don't remember. I think it's Jingwei Yalowei. It might have been Shanghan Lun. So we can just say it's a Zhongzhongjing formula from the Shanghan Zabing Lun. And really what this is treating is, it's not just any type of constipation. It was originally indicated for something called spleen bind. So this was a pattern of heat, dryness, blocking the movement of fluids, and stagnating the qi. So this is a heat condition. We can tell it's a heat condition because the tongue is dry with a yellow coat, the pulse is rapid, and so we can tell this is definitely a heat condition. But our symptoms are constipation, that's difficult to expel, but with normal to frequent urination. So here we have a situation where this is actually a heat condition. We can tell it's a heat condition because the tongue is red and the pulse is rapid, but it's causing frequent urination. And so the way we explain this is that this heat dryness is binding in the spleen, blocking the transformation of fluids. So those fluids aren't getting into the large intestine. Those fluids aren't providing moisture to soften the stool. The fluids are getting blocked. So we still have normal urination or even frequent urination, but then we see constipation. So this is another kind of weird thing where, yes, normally if you saw someone with frequent urination, you would think, this person has yang deficiency. Their kidney is not transforming the fluids. They don't got enough kidney yang to steam the fluids. They have yang deficiency. But really, that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is we have heat and dryness stagnating the qi, blocking the fluids, and that's why we have this frequent urination. So kind of going back to the original one, again, I don't want to give like a specific, if I haven't seen a patient, I don't want to give like be too specific about it. But this is a possibility if the person has clear, white, abundant urination, but all the other signs and symptoms point to heat. It could be that we have some heat dampness or some heat dryness that's blocking the transformation of fluids, and that frequent urination is really just because those fluids aren't being transformed through other means. So I would kind of want to look at the patient a little bit more, know what the tongue and pulse is like, and know, are there other signs of cold? Because if we see this dual vacuity of yin and yang, usually we would see that in an older patient, or there would be some history pointing to it. So is it really a dual vacuity of yin and yang? Or is it a heat condition, and that heat is just blocking the transformation of fluids? Do we have other signs of coldness? Or is it just the frequent urination, the only thing that we're going on? So maybe in general, I would say that usually the tongue and pulse don't lie to you. Actually, that's not entirely true. If a person is on medications, the pulse can lie to you, especially if they're on like blood pressure medications that can artificially slow down the pulse. I suppose the tongue can lie to you. Some people brush their tongue, or they like drink some hot coffee, and that changes the color of the tongue. But I would say, generally speaking, when we talk about true cold and false heat, things like that, the tongue and pulse are going to give you the true symptoms usually. Whereas if a person says, "Oh, I have cold hands and feet," maybe that's false cold. So, boop 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 boop. Hello from Vancouver. Oh, treatment for insulin resistance. I don't know. This is one of those things that's very difficult because in TCM there's like, I'm not sure traditionally they knew anything about insulin. We do talk about diabetes in the form of like xiao ke, wasting and thirsting disease, where a person is very hungry, very thirsty, they pee a lot, but they're also like wasting away, and we say that's like diabetes. But in terms of insulin resistance, that's usually like when people come into me with a Western diagnosis, I'm kind of like, what does that look like to you? What kind of symptoms are you experiencing? I know this doctor told you you had this disease, but fibromyalgia, what does that look like to you? Hypothyroidism, what kind of symptoms do you feel that make you know that you have hypothyroidism? And then we can go from there and kind of frame it into a Chinese medicine diagnosis. But really, insulin resistance, I'm pretty sure they pharmaceutically they would use metformin, is my understanding. And this is going to be not a very TCM answer, but kind of my feeling on this is things like insulin resistance, usually that's caused, I mean, unless we're talking about like a type 1 diabetes where there's something going on. If we're talking more about a type 2 situation, Usually insulin resistance is, in that case, is due to diet and lifestyle. So I'd work on diet and lifestyle to fix that. And so sometimes the way I describe insulin, we say insulin resistance or insulin sensitivity. Sometimes I describe it more of an insulin tolerance. So think about like, I drink coffee every day. I drink coffee and Diet Mountain Dew every day. And so what happens is if you've never had coffee before and you take some caffeine, you feel really excited. It's a adenosine receptor antagonist, so you feel really awake, feel really energetic, feel really excited. But what happens is over time, if you keep drinking a lot of coffee, you develop a tolerance. So eventually the caffeine stops working. If you want to get that same effect, you have to take more caffeine. So you start out with 1 cup a day, then you're 2 cups a day, then you're drinking venti mocha things or whatever. And so basically your body develops a tolerance to the caffeine. And so if you want that same effect, you have to get more and more caffeine in order for it to work. How do you break this cycle? You stop drinking coffee. And it's going to suck for a while. You're going to have a headache. You're going to go through withdrawal symptoms. But once you stop drinking coffee for a while, that resets your tolerance. Well, when we say insulin resistance, at least in like a type 2 sort of situation, I kind of think of that as like you're developing a tolerance to insulin. That like I eat a bunch of carbohydrate, my body produces insulin. I eat a bunch more carbohydrate, my body produces more insulin. Eventually, my body develops a tolerance. That insulin isn't doing what it's supposed to do anymore. And so how do we treat it? Well, we give more insulin. Just like I drank so much coffee, but now I'm still tired. Why don't we drink some more coffee? Your body is producing so much insulin, but it's not doing its job. Well, let's inject you with more insulin. How do you break that cycle? This is not medical advice, but that's why some people go on to like low carb diets and things like that, is that we're trying to make it so that the body's not producing so much insulin, and then you kind of reset that tolerance. So maybe go on YouTube and look up Jason Fung. He has a lot of stuff about fasting and about reversing insulin resistance, or the opposite of insulin resistance is insulin sensitivity. So you can look at things on like low carb diets, ketogenic diets, or just straight up fasting to reset your insulin tolerance. And so that's what I would go with. And in terms of like herbs and acupuncture, I don't know. It's kind of hard to frame in terms of TCM, but generally that's kind of a snarky approach to it, but I kind of feel like it's usually something that happens through diet and lifestyle. So I would first step, I would turn to diet and lifestyle to fix the problem. And again, Jason Fung, that's like what he does. He's based in Canada actually, and I think he's become a bit weird now, but he has some like fasting protocols that, according to him, have been very effective. Oh, what are some good sources and ways to make studying better for all 3 OM exams, acupuncture, foundation, and herbs? Yeah, so I have material on the website, but I have to be honest that when I create things for the website, that was usually in a response to the classes I was teaching. So for a while I was teaching Herbs 1, and I was TAing for Herbs 2 and Herbs 3. So when I made things on the website, it wasn't really focused on passing the boards. I was focusing more on, these are things you need to know for this class. Either you're in Herbs 1, these are the things you need to know for Herbs 1, these are the things you're going to need to know to pass your year-end exams, or more importantly, these are the things you're going to need to know when you get to your formula class, or these are the things you're going to need to know when you treat patients. So when I make those videos and stuff, I'm really more focusing on the things that I think are important, either for formulas or for clinic. That's not necessarily the same as what's going to show up on your board test. So sometimes I have to say that the stuff I make is not meant to be a board review, but people use it that way, and I think it would be very good. But I feel like there are other people who focus specifically on, these are the trends for boards, these are the type of questions they like to ask, these are the things that you need to know. They're going to ask you questions about clean needle technique, that they're going to ask you a lot about Dui-Yao pairs, and these people are up on the trends that are on the test. So I'd look at like Bina. I think TCMreview.com has some good stuff. HB Kim I really like. Either get the HB Kim book. I think he actually has some courses as well. So I think he's a good one. Honestly, when I was studying for nationals, I just got that HB Kim book. Not like the little clinic manual, but like the big Handbook of Oriental Medicine by Hyunbai Kim from, I think from Elizabethtown, Kentucky. He came into our clinic once in Kentucky, so I think that's, at least at the time, that's where he was. Get that big book by H.B. Kim, and well, at least when I took the test, this was 12 years ago, a lot of it just was like straight out of that book. If you were going to take foundations, flip through the foundation sections, and basically the questions looked like there was this one chart on E7, and they asked the question that specifically came from this one chart. So I just blinked. I hope I'm still online and not just talking to myself. So I would look at like HB Kim. Oh, let me make sure I'm still online. Some weird things just happened on my computer. I should have like a view post section. Oh well. Oh yeah, there's still stuff going through. Yeah, I have the one the fifth edition. Yeah, so that's kind of what I did, is because at least when I wanted it, like I remember there was one page where like some of this stuff I don't remember covering in school, but there was one page where it went through the order of a treatment, what you should go through, that like the diagnosis, treatment, developing a pattern, coming up with a treatment strategy. There was like a step-by-step, here's how you do a treatment. There was a question specifically on that on the test. There was one section, I'm pretty sure we didn't learn this, but there was one section, something about the lines on the hand and how you use that diagnostically in pediatrics. There is one chart in that in HB Kim, and we had one question on that on the test. So I'd go through that. So that's what I go through. But again, I don't know much about boards. I feel like nationals were kind of easy when I took them, but I think things are different now, so I don't know much about boards. Boop boop ba doo. Panic attacks. Yeah, that seems to be a thing. That's kind of one of those, like, was that always a thing, or is that just recently a thing, or is it just something that we talk about more? Yeah, panic attacks. I feel like one of the things we often talk about with panic attacks is there's this weird thing in TCM we call running piglet chi. This is another Zhong thing from the Jingwei Yaolui. He talked about this symptom of running piglet chi, where it feels like you have some chi in your lower jiao that rushes up to your chest. It feels like there's a little piglet running up your chongmai into your chest, and that's usually accompanied with intense anxiety. It's brought on by fear and fright. And so sometimes people think that, oh, ZZJ was describing a panic attack. So yeah, panic attack. Usually we're talking about something with the kidney and or heart. So that's one possibility, is looking at, fear and fright as kidney and heart. Usually the symptoms we look at are associated with the kidney and heart. When you have a panic attack, it's like your heart starts pounding, palpitations. That's a heart thing. Sometimes people start sweating. Sweat is the fluid of the heart. Sometimes people, when they have a panic attack, they lose the ability to speak or speak coherently. Remember, the heart sprouts in the tongue. We have points like heart 5 goes to the tongue and helps with speech things. So when you lose the ability to speak, you're struck dumb, or you babble incoherently, that's also a heart thing. Or you, in severe cases, you might lose the ability to interact with your external environment. Basically, it's like, this is when somebody has to slap you to snap you out of it. That's a type of Shen disturbance, that the Shen Ming, the spirit brightness, is being clouded. But we can also look at the kidney, because the kidney governs fear, and so that's, sometimes we think about things like, if you get so scared you urinate yourself, that's, the kidney is losing control and the chi is descending. So usually we'd probably look at heart things, and we might talk about how the kidney is supposed to link up with the heart. The kidney and heart are supposed to communicate harmoniously, so that's something we might think of. So I would start looking in that direction. I think we have some books that lay out the specific patterns for that, so I might start thinking in that direction. Um, I think sometimes, depending on the case, we usually talk about that heart and kidney thing, but this running piglet chi can also be caused by liver chi stagnation. So we kind of have to do an underlying diagnosis of, do they have a lot of, it's like if this liver chi stagnates and everything gets stuck in there, it can kind of erupt like a geyser, and that can also cause that running piglet chi. So we have to think of, is it a kidney and heart thing? Is it like a liver excess thing? Or is it like the liver and the hun is also associated with courage, and the gallbladder is associated with gall or courage. So we can talk about like gallbladder timidity, and that the gallbladder can also be connected with the heart when you talk about heart and gallbladder timidity. So there are some possibilities there. So there are a couple of possibilities. I will say, in the modern clinic, when people come in and tell me they have anxiety or panic attacks, one of the things I ask them is, how much coffee do you drink? Because this is kind of an interesting thing where every body reacts differently to caffeine. We have some people that, I know some people that drink 5 cups of coffee a day and they're totally fine. They sleep real well at night. They can be like, oh, I drank coffee at 8 p.m. and I can still be in bed by 10 and I'm totally fine. There are other people that drinking coffee increases their panic attacks. Like I had one patient that she had anxiety, panic attacks. To me it was very clear, a heart blood deficiency pattern. Gave her guipi tong, and that helped. But I also told her to cut down on coffee, and she noticed that when she stopped drinking coffee, there was a decrease in the frequency and severity of her panic attacks. And then sometimes she used to report that even if she had coffee like twice a week, that would set off the panic attacks. And so that's another thing I would look at, that just, a lot of people are really into coffee and caffeine nowadays. I had another patient that it was a younger guy, maybe a 28-year-old male, and he was coming in, and basically he was like describing these episodes that he worked at a hotel where he had to interact with customers, and sometimes he would just get really nervous, his palms would get sweaty, his heart would start pounding, and he would describe these episodes where he would just get really nervous and want to run away. And I was kind of like, pretty sure you're describing a panic attack. But when we did the diagnosis, there wasn't a lot going on with him. He was a really healthy guy. Going through all the 10 questions, everything was totally fine. And then I was like, this is going to be like kind of a shot in the dark, but how much coffee do you drink every day? And he's like, oh, I don't drink coffee. I don't drink any coffee. But I do really like those Monster energy drinks. Like, how many of those do you drink? Oh, I drink like 4 of them a day. And not like the little ones, but like the big extra large cans. And I was like, I'm pretty sure there's a warning on the side of the can that tells you not to do that. That's a lot of caffeine. And I was like, have you ever tried not doing that? And he was like, oh yeah, I mean, now that you say that, on the days when I don't drink those Monster energies, I have fewer of these episodes. I'm like, maybe that caffeine is doing something to you. So that's another just kind of lifestyle thing I like to ask. Otherwise, I feel like anxiety, panic attacks, especially common in women, just because women are more prone to blood deficiency. And so I would say that's like the kind of common pattern I see, is like a heart blood deficiency using something like Wei Pitong. But again, do your pattern diagnosis. Maybe there's a lot of heat and maybe you need to use Tianwang Bushindan. Maybe there's some heart and gallbladder timidity and you need to use some Wendon Tong or something like that. So again, look at the patterns, but I do see a lot of blood deficiency with that. And then biomedicine. I don't have anything on I'm not good with biomedicine. I don't like biomedicine. I can't believe I passed the biomedicine board. So again, that's I just flipped through the section on HB Chem and tried to do my best from there. And I feel like biomedicine might also have like the laws and ethics section on that. Like one of those sections, it's not just biomedicine, it's also like the NCCM code of conduct. There are a couple questions on that, so make sure you look at the NCCM code of conduct. And again, this is like, I took this test 12 years ago. I'm not sure what it's like now. You should probably like talk to HB Kim, talk to Bina, talk to Linda Morse or someone like that who's more up on the trends. What's the function of the pancreas in TCM? This is a really interesting one. Is there a pancreas in TCM? Is the spleen actually the pancreas? So I've heard a couple different things. I need to... I should probably say that I'm just kind of going off of memory. I don't have a lot of sources for this, so I'm just kind of going off of some things I've heard, some rumor, some speculation. So don't take this as fact. But sometimes you see people like to argue about when you talk about the spleen in TCM, do we really mean the pancreas? And you'll even see certain books will translate P as pancreas. So instead of talking about spleen Qi deficiency, they'll say pancreas Qi deficiency. There are parts in the Neijing where it actually describes the organs, where it talks about the dimensions and the weight of the organs. And some people use that as evidence that when we say spleen, we really mean pancreas. There are some people who say in the classics there's this part where we talk about the spleen and then we talk about the tail of the spleen, that the spleen has this little offshoot or tail, and people are like, that's what the pancreas is. It's the tail of the spleen. And this came up on a Facebook group once, and there was... It wasn't Sabine. There was one person who's pretty scholarly, speaks, translates classical Chinese, and has written a lot of books. And her response to it was basically, who cares? Whether you call it the spleen or the pancreas, who cares? I mean, the organs in TCM are not the same as the organs in Western anatomy anyway. So why does it matter what we call them? That whether you say there's a Han tie-in spleen channel or a Han tie-in pancreas channel or a Han tie-in smiley face garbage can channel, whatever you call it, it doesn't really matter what the name is. That wouldn't affect what points you use. That wouldn't affect how you do your diagnostics. That wouldn't affect what kind of herbs you would use. So, so whether we call it the spleen or the pancreas, I think that's a good answer. Who cares? There's this thing in Chinese called a pi, and it has certain functions. It has certain functions of transforming dampness. It has certain functions of rotting and ripening the food, that it's supposed to raise the clear and things like that. That's something we can say about the pi organ. I'm not sure if it's P second tone or P fourth tone. My Chinese isn't very good. But that's something we can say about the P organ, whether we call it a spleen or a pancreas. Who cares? I think later in life people decided they were two different things, and that's why we have a back shoe point of the pancreas. I think that's kind of more of a modern invention. But as far as I know, most people when they say pancreas, we're really talking about the spleen and the pancreas together. We don't have a lot of separate, classically, I don't think there's a lot of separation of the pancreas. How do we know when we're ready to cure people? I don't know, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like hopefully you would kind of ease yourself into it. That's why you start out as an observer, and then you become an assistant, and then you become an intern. And like when you're in school, you're an intern, you got a supervisor watching over you and making sure nothing goes wrong, making sure you don't kill anybody. And so if shit hits the fan, you always have somebody else to blame it on. That's the supervisor. So hopefully you would kind of ease into it and develop confidence over time. But yeah, there's a lot of... I don't know. There's a lot of shit that comes along with trying to cure people, trying to heal people. Because you can develop a lot of boundary issues. You can develop a lot of ego problems. Like when you try to heal someone, like, are you really doing it for them? Or are you doing it to satisfy your own ego because you like to think of yourself as a healer? And so when I try to cure someone. I'm not actually doing it for them. I'm trying to satisfy my image of I'm a healer. I heal people. Do people start attaching to you when you like start to like give them good results? Sometimes they like latch on to you, and it becomes very parasitic and very annoying. So I don't know. But TCM is very confusing. The more I know, the more I think I don't know. Yes, that's true. I don't think that's going to stop. I think that's more you get to a point where you start to embrace it. That's like, I'm always suspicious of the people who are very confident in themselves in that sort of Dunning-Kruger effect kind of a way. The people who like act very scholarly and think they know what they're talking about, they're probably faking it. I think most people, the more they know, the more they don't know, sort of thing. So that's very common, but again, like when it comes to actually treating patients, as you go through, you usually develop more confidence. Usually the first and the second year, people are like, I have no idea what's going on. It's like, I've learned all these things, I've memorized all these things, I've passed all these tests, I can answer the question on the test, but when it comes to like seeing an actual patient and trying to heal them, I have no fucking clue what to do. And that's something that gets better with time. Once you get into your third or fourth year, that gets better. I would even say that a lot of people, at least in our program, when you became an intern, you had 3 semesters and an intern. A lot of people, their first semester as an intern, they were very timid. They were very unsure of themselves. They didn't know what to do. By the time they got to their second semester, they had a lot more confidence. They're like, yeah, I got this. I might not be able to cure everything. I might not understand everything that comes through the door, but they have some confidence of, I can treat that. I can do something. I can get some results. So that's just something that comes with experience. But yeah, if you really want to dive into the deeper aspects to it, you're always going to not know a whole lot. As I'm saying, what was a study suggested for boards? Yes, HB Kim. Trying to think of what his website is. Sometimes if we just Google HB Kim, that comes up. Acupuncture Media, that's right. So if you're reviewing for boards, I think this is a good one. HB Kim is acupuncturemedia.com, or just Google HB Kim. And so he does have books. So I would recommend getting this Handbook of Oriental Medicine. Oh, look, he has sample pages. So he has things a lot of like organized by like charts and things like that. So it makes it really easy to sort of condense down the information. Like, I know that some people are like, when I studied for boards, I got out my Deadman and I read it from cover to cover. I'm like, that's a kind of a thick book. I'm not sure I'd recommend doing that. Or like, oh, I got my Machiocha Fundamentals and I read it cover to cover. I'm like, that sounds like a lot. Maybe it's better just to get an HB Kim, and everything's kind of organized pretty nicely in HB Kim. So that's his textbook. And then he also does have some review courses. So those look decently priced. It's not like, oh, we're going to charge you $600 to take these practice tests. I was never really into that, but those look decently priced. And so I know a lot of people like his stuff. The other one is, I think this is Bina, but this is another one that people do a lot, is TCM Review. So again, I don't know much about these courses. I just know that these are things that other people do. So those are some options. You can maybe look into some of their stuff about what you think, because I have some review courses, but those are set up more to be like reviewing for year end. So again, I'm not sure if they're great for nationals. I know that some people have used them to take nationals. But they weren't specifically designed for nationals. I don't know what kind of questions they're asking. I'm just like, this is what I think it's important to know if you want to actually heal people. So graduated. What would you say for someone that graduated, but you have to, it was a while ago, and you have to like remember the information? I don't know. Again, I'm not really an expert on how to pass boards and things like that. So some of these, so there are review courses, and some of them are fairly comprehensive that like kind of take you through the whole thing. So, what does Linda Morris have one that's for nationals too? I know Linda Morris does a lot for kale. Does she do stuff for? So this is Linda Morris. What are her things? Oh yeah, she does do stuff for nationals. So I think she's one that she also has courses, um, and so that's maybe something that you can go. It'll be like a boot camp style thing where you go through all the stuff. I think Linda Morse is very good at holding you accountable, and some people really like that, and some people are like, that's not my thing. Some people are like, I really want someone telling me what to do and stuff like that. Where some people are like, I just kind of want to browse through it. So I think she's one that she'll like call you up and be like, why aren't you studying or so. So some people do really like her courses as well. So I just know people who took the Kale review. I know she did nationals as well. So that's something to. That's another thing you can do is just like do one of those courses, and that way you can kind of go through everything, and hopefully it'll come back to you. Anything else? Oh, we've been going for almost an hour. I kind of have to go to the bathroom. I need to go let my cat out. I've been locking my cat in the bedroom. I don't think he likes it. My cat has started hunting me, and I think this is a sign that I need to play with the cat more, because sometimes I'll be walking around and be like crouched behind a corner about to like pounce at my feet. Anything else? Sean, great stream. Thanks for being here, Sean. Is that a Dow symbol? Awesome. Newest book from Purple Cloud. No, what's the newest book from Purple Cloud? Let me look that up. That's not the song, is it? The song is Purple Rain, Chocolate Rain, Purple Cloud. Zi Yun, like a purple cloud ointment, is Zi Yun Gao. Okay, so it turns out typing in purple cloud on Google is not necessarily a great idea. So let me see what the book for. Can we use TCM method without using Chinese herbs and just any herb we think is useful? I don't know. Let me think about this. Because, obviously, when we're studying traditional Chinese medicine, they had herbs that were available to them. And sometimes it depended on, the region it was grown in and stuff like that. So, herbs that were grown in Sichuan were different from the same plant that was grown in the north, kind of like with wine. It's like the grape. It not only depends on the species of grape, it also depends on where it was grown and what the soil and the environment was like. So a lot of times when we talk about these herbs, we're talking about the herbs that were grown in China. Can we use other herbs? Maybe. I think it's kind of hard because when you start to mix like that, when we talk about Chinese herbs, we're talking about them in a specific way, that they go to certain organs and have an effect on the qi dynamic in a certain way. And so when you start talking about other herbs, how do you know what that is? But then on the other hand, I have a friend here in Colorado that she says she's combining Chinese herbs and Western herbs. And the main reason she's doing it is because Chinese herbs taste terrible and nobody wants to drink Huangli and Jiedutong. So instead she combines it with some tea and makes something that people will actually drink. So it's a lot of Western herbs that actually taste okay, and then a little bit of Chinese herbs to be a little bit more medicinal. And then we can maybe think about, are there herbs or foods that were not traditionally used in China, but can we think about them in that same paradigm? So I think that if you're doing that, you need to think about these in that paradigm. So like if we think about coffee, instead of like going up and researching how does coffee affect the pancreas, maybe we can start thinking about coffee as like, well, coffee is probably warm in temperature, it's bitter and acrid, it might have some effect of moving things through the middle jiao, because a lot of times, traditionally people would use coffee as a digestive. In Europe, you would drink your coffee after the meal to help you digest the food. And this is just something I've noticed, like if you like eat a bunch of pancakes or something and you're like, oh, I got this food stagnation, drinking some coffee will help. So we can think that maybe coffee has some effect of regulating middle jiao qi or breaking up stagnation. Coffee is very drying in nature. It's warm, acrid, bitter, and I would say drying, that if you drink it too much, it can start to dry you out. Coffee is also very warm in temperature. It can have the side effect of giving you stomach heat. Sometimes people, when they drink like black coffee, they get like ulcer type things. It's stomach heat. Sometimes that heat can go up into the heart. So when people drink coffee, they start to get palpitations. They talk real fast. They start getting anxiety, so that's a sign that this coffee is producing heat that's going into the heart. Sometimes that heart heat pours into the small intestine, and you get urination problems. So these are some ways that we can think of something like coffee in TCM terms. Maybe you can do that with other herbs. Maybe it'll be different. Oh, Dongchen Li. Yeah, didn't. Was he the one who wrote the diagnostic? No, I'm thinking of Dongcheng Li. That's a very difficult to read title. Sorry, Dongcheng Li. I feel like you should have gotten a different graphic designer, because it's like that's hard to read that text on that background. It looks cool, but maybe choose a different font, choose a different color. It looks like you just put some drop shadow on there, and it's kind of hard to read that text. Is that the one we're looking at? Oh, yeah. Are we talking about review books on? Oh, I was thinking this is the Purple Cloud book. Yeah. Still need to know what the Purple Cloud book is. So yeah, I feel like I've heard of that name, but I don't know much about that book. Oh, look, you can look inside. I always like that when you look inside. Oh, again, this is gonna sound really mean, but let's like do I have it here? Yeah, it's like this. Like I really like this book by Nigel Weissman and Eric Brand, Concise Chinese Materia Medica. But I remember the first time I opened up, it's like, whew, you should have hired a graphic designer. It's like, this looks like this. It's like sometimes people make business cards and they're like, do you like my business card? I made it myself. I'm like, yeah, I can tell you made it yourself. And so there's somewhere it's like, oh, it looks like you did this yourself in Microsoft Word. But that's just me being really elitist. We shouldn't judge a book by its font choices. So yeah, I feel like I have heard of this. People have talked about this. I don't own it. I don't know anything specifically about it. So, are we just listing herbs here? Oh look, that's kind of cool. He like breaks it down by week. Oh, that's really it. Kind of gives you a schedule of how to prepare. That's really cool. I like that. So yeah, yeah. If anybody knows about that, paperback book is $60. That's pretty cheap for a TCM book. So yeah. Oh, it's a 2021 edition. That means it's updated. Oh yeah, that looks good. Yeah, try that out. But yeah, that's a. Boop 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 boo. Anything else fun? I'm not sure why people are talking about bullfrog nanoparticles. Oh, sorry. Let me go back here. Coffee reduce hiccups. I don't know, possibly. Usually I see like other types of rebellious stomach chi, like basically like heat in the stomach signs, and then sometimes like acid reflux and stuff like that. I'm not sure specifically about hiccups, but speaking as someone who's like been on a lot of coffee, I'd say more like stomach heat, maybe some rebellious stomach chi, but that would be more like, again, acid reflux, stuff like that. Boop 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 boo. Tron, like to treat patients, and I felt so badly about myself. Have you experienced sometimes patients gave you a hard time and you ask yourself about your TCM passion? Um, I guess it kind of depends on what you mean by a hard time. Is it just like they like to argue with you about things, or they call you a fraud, or can I learn acupuncture or acupressure online? I don't recommend it. And that's the thing. It's like people are always asking me about like making more point location videos. I really didn't want to make point location videos. I only made point location videos because one of the other teachers asked me to. And I know a lot of people really appreciate those videos, especially because we're in lockdown and it's hard to learn these things online. But it's kind of like, that's the kind of stuff you really have to learn in person. It's just not real when it comes from a book. And then we like go to the other. I've been talking to Zach Louis lately. He's a medical qigong master, and so like he talks about like he went to these very traditional Chinese teachers, where it's like he had to stand in horse stance for 2 hours and press on his lung one, and they'd be like, do you feel a difference in your lung one? When you press here, what do you feel? Do you feel a difference? And that's how he learned the points. And so I feel like you at least need some in-person practice of somebody showing you where the points are. I made those videos just kind of as a review. So I would not recommend, I don't know. So it's like, I put videos online, and I kind of put this disclaimer on the front that they're meant as a review for people who are studying in person. If you want to learn acupuncture, you should go to a school and learn it a person. Unless you're talking about acupressure, when people like post memes like, oh, rub here and it'll help with your nausea when you're flying on an airplane. That's probably harmless, but it's not real Chinese medicine. So I would say, yeah, learning in person. I would say like even the schools we do now are probably not the same caliber as apprenticing from a master back in the day. That back in the day it was like that. Yeah, you do qigong and you press on things and you get like an actual experience of the points. So I would say, like, at a minimum, you should have somebody experienced being like, here's where you locate the point, and they tell you if you're right or not. A lot of people try to read books or do things online, and they think they're doing it right, but then they actually don't know what they don't know. They don't realize they're doing it wrong. So here Dong is saying that they don't want me to ask any questions, just put in the needles, don't go through the 10 questions. And yeah, this is something, again, I just did this podcast with Zach Louis, and we talk about protecting yourself from your patients and boundary issues and compassion fatigue and getting burnout. And yeah, this is one of those things where sometimes you get the patients that they just, especially like I'll get someone with like knee pain and I want to start asking them about like, how's your digestion? How's your sleep? And they're like, I don't want to work on that. Just stick needles in my knee. And it's kind of like, I know that like some people have like a 3-strike rule where it's like the first or second time I'll be patient, but by the third time I'm going to be like, this isn't a good fit. Get out of here. And so that's the kind of thing where it's like maybe at first I'll be like, I understand that you don't want to address these issues, or I understand that you don't like this part, but I'm the professional here. I'm the guy who knows what he's doing. I'm the guy who's treating you. And so this is, for my treatment, this is something that we have to go through. And it eventually gets to the point where it's like, if you don't want to go through that, go see someone else. And that's not to be an asshole, and that's not to be mean, but that's part of like maintaining boundaries and protecting my sanity, is that I'm going to do things like, I'm the healer. I'm going to heal the way that I do it. If you don't like that, go see a chiropractor. And so I think that's because, yeah, if people do that to you too long, you start to get resentful. You start to get like, is this something I really want to do? I mean, like, I have a YouTube channel and I can get 100 good comments, but I always remember the one bad comment, and that makes you think, like, is it really worth doing this? And so I can see the same thing with patients when they like start to give you shit about things. You're like, do I really want to do this? And that's where you just have to maintain good boundaries. You have to be centered, and maybe listen to that podcast with Zach that I have coming up. Maybe I'll go see, and we can plug Zach while we're here. I have to go find his website. Because Zach Louis, I did a podcast with him already where we talked about Qigong and medical Qigong, and now he's doing something called a boot camp called Psychic Self-Defense for Body Workers. And so this is something he has come up. Psychic Self-Defense for Body Workers. It's now it's $250, I think. It's going to go up. But so here we talk about like how to protect yourself from your patients. So ever feel tired or sick after working with a client, and how to protect yourself. And so I think that this kind of falls under the same category as sometimes you get some patients and you're just like, I'm tired of your bullshit. I don't want to do this anymore. This is like, you're like, by being like, I don't want you to palpate me. I don't want you to ask me questions. That's bringing me down. That's affecting my spirit. So either I need to be able to shield myself. I need to be able to ground myself to protect me from that. Or I need to set some boundaries and say, look, this is my show. Either you play by my rules or go somewhere else. So that's kind of an interesting thing. So that's something you can check out is, so Zach, if you go to podcast.tcm study, and so our last one was medical Qigong. It wasn't a year ago. This was quite a while ago where we talked about medical Qigong with Zach, and it was a really interesting thing. And one of the things we talk about is doing Qigong to protect yourself. Well, now he came back and we did another one where we're specifically talking about, the whole thing is about protecting yourself from the negative energy of your patients, things you can do to ground, to shield, setting boundaries, compassion fatigue, people who are just annoying. I don't treat a lot of patients anymore just because I think they're annoying. And yeah, and then we kind of get into that thing is you have to think about like, why are you here? Why are you doing this? Why do you want to be a healer? Because it's inevitably you're gonna get bombarded by that shit like that. Either you're gonna have really difficult cases, you're gonna have terminal patients who aren't gonna get better, you're gonna have patients who blame you, you're gonna have patients just with a negative outlook, or don't touch me, don't ask me questions. And so you kind of have to go back to that, why are you doing this sort of thing. Boop-boop-a-doo. I'm starting to lose my voice, and I'm starting to need to use the restroom, so we might just call it here. I'm glad that people showed up for the live stream. We can keep doing the live stream if you want. It's like, I was doing that for a while, then I got busy making some courses and stuff, and I stopped doing the weekly live streams. If people are going to show up, we can keep doing the weekly live streams and just hang out and talk about Chinese medicine, and I can be a pretentious jerk about that. I think I just got into a fight with someone on Facebook because I was a pretentious jerk, so. I think that's about it. Thank you to the Patreon members. Again, I don't know if I think I said this before, where I was like, oh, with a Patreon, there were two tiers. There was a $5 tier and a $10 tier, and usually the perk of the $10 tier was I had that private community. I think I'm going to shut that down. So it's kind of like, If you want, you can sign up for the $5 tier, or you can sign up the $10 tier, and it just means you're giving me more money, and I appreciate that. There's not really a whole lot of extra bonuses for joining the Patreon. I was thinking, I always try to think of things I can do for the Patreon. So, like, for a while, I was doing some things where I'd like just do some quick Q&As, where I'd had some videos that are like Patreon only videos where I'd answer questions like that. So I kind of did that last year. I might try to start doing that again now, but there's not a whole lot of benefits to joining the Patreon, more that you just want to support this channel. So if you're supporting this channel either through the Patreon, through things like Buy Me a Coffee, or if you want to buy some of the online courses, or now we have this new merchandise out. We have this new merchandise out, so if you want to support the website and channel that way, I really appreciate it. We'll have some things going on next week. I want to keep going through all the herbs. So we just did the B syndrome herbs. I think the next one is like phlegm heat maybe. I want to keep going through the herbs. I might try to go through the points and do some more formula stuff. So we're going to do some stuff next week. I'll probably send out an email on Monday. So if you want to get news about what's happening, make sure you join the email list. That's about it. Why do you keep popping up like that? I think that's about it. I'm going to go walk my cat. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time. Oh yeah, also, I am, like I said, I am doing a podcast. I just recorded a podcast with Zach. I'm about like halfway through editing that, so that should be coming up in the next couple days too. Some new podcast episodes, so we might try to redo that too. But again, I'll announce it on the email and the Instagram. So thanks for being here. I'm gonna go drink some more coffee. See you next time.